Look at particularly the colors of the buildings and the cars and the life that's going on around us. When we think about the 1930s and into the 40s, we often think in black and white, because that's mostly what But these people who we are remembering today didn't live in black and white. They lived in color. Colorful lives, and they lived as regular human beings and as Jews in this society. And their experience of Nuremberg was what you see here now. Maybe not specifically this building, but around us. As we gather today, yesterday we focused on death. Today, we focus on these people living. And that's what we're memorializing. That's what we're commemorating this day, is the fact that they lived. They sat at Seder tables, they traded jokes, their Hanukkah candles glowed as brightly and as colorfully as a lamp. So Ellen, offer your thoughts about people that we are commemorating, whose lives we are commemorating this day. You spoke about the fact that, unlike memorials, this is about living without life. And so share with us about the lives that we're remembering today.
I'm going to read this because, first of all, there's a lot here and I don't want to miss anything, and secondly, this is very emotional for me, and if I try to wing it, I'll skip a lot and I'll miss, so you have to forgive me. Am I speaking loud enough? Would you put me a little closer? I want to thank each of you for joining me on this bittersweet occasion when we're going to dedicate stolpersteine, or stumbling stones, to my mother's parents, her older brother, and to my mother. I'll tell you more about each of them in a minute. I especially want to thank Pascal Metzger, without whose help we would not be able to memorialize my close relatives, who, except for my mother, all perished in the Holocaust. Pascal was my contact for the stolpersteine, and he helped me with much more than that. He searched the city archives to confirm the address and he obtained an aerial photo and a document which gives their birth dates and places of birth. The address to which they were sent when they were forced to leave this home, their dates of deportation, and their fates. And those are probably the last photos of my grandparents and my Uncle Rob living in Brooklyn. So I'll pass these around. There's also a family tree here. Let's split them up. Look at them as I speak. So thank you, Pastor. I also want to thank Rabbi Friedman, who agreed immediately when I asked him to conduct this dedication. He's been very supportive of the need to do this on this very tight schedule. Thank you. The first page, it's all mixed up now, I think, but there's a page there that is an introduction to the list of Nuremberg's victims of the Shoah. And it explains that the first Jewish citizen in 350 years was allowed to settle in Nuremberg in 1850. There were Jews here in the Middle Ages, but then they were expelled, and they were allowed to come back in 1850. My grandfather, whom we're going to commemorate today, was born in 1872, so his parents were early settlers here. I don't know exactly where they came from, although I am guessing that they came from Eisenheim, a small town about 190 miles northwest of here, because that's the town that's listed as my great-grandfather's place of birth. My grandfather lived in England for about 20 years, and he visited New York twice, where he had a brother named Julius and a half-brother named Albert Lindman. And I'll speak again about Albert when I tell you about my mother. Eventually, my grandfather returned from England to Nuremberg to settle down. He found a young Jewish woman from another small city called Redwitz, and he married her. My grandmother was 20 years younger than my grandmother, almost different generations. Toy manufacturing was big here in Nuremberg, and I think my grandfather owned a wooden toy factory. Let me tell you something about each of them. My grandfather's name was Arthur Alexander Lindman. My mother was very close with her father, and she spoke very lovingly about him. He was very cultured and worldly, having lived in England for 20 years and having visited America twice. He and his bride lived in a house on this farm, but as you already heard, this house was destroyed by the Allied armies during World War II. My mother described her father as being like Gandhi. By that, I think she meant that he was gentle and soft-spoken, unlike many German men of that time who were more like Prussian soldiers. I think he even looked like Gandhi. My grandmother, Ida, came from a small town, Redwitz, whose population at the end of last year, 2017, was about 3,300. My mother described her mother as a country bumpkin, and her maiden name was Pooh, which means cow. She knew how to cook and sew, but she wasn't an intellectual like my grandmother. She didn't allow my mother to help in the kitchen because kids in the kitchen are slow and make a mess. So consequently, my mother didn't even know how to boil an egg when she married my father. My grandparents probably married in about 1911 or 1912. Her first child was a boy, my Uncle Robert, who was born in 1913. He was a sweet boy and a gifted pianist, but he had a mild to moderate intellectual handicap. They thought it was due to a birth injury, but looking at the photos of him, I think he may have had a genetic condition called Fragile X syndrome. That's my background, human genetics. I know that my mother was expected to hold Robert's hand. He was 3 years older than she. She was expected to hold his hand and take him everywhere that she or he went. My mother really resented that, and I can understand that. I don't have a lot of information about Robert. I paid for research to be done by someone that Pascal knows, but she wasn't able to find much. What we do know is that Robert was sent to an institution named Kalmenhof, but we don't know when he was sent there. We know that he was discharged in February 1933, a year before my mother left Germany. And he was sent back here, presumably back to live with my grandparents, but I don't know that for sure, because my mother apparently didn't see him before she left. My grandparents and my Uncle Robert were later sent to a Jewish ghetto here in Nuremberg. So their last address on that sheet of paper that has their 3 ID photos, and it says where they were born and where they lived, that's their last address. It's not this place. It was the Jewish ghetto where all the Jews, or at least some of the Jews, congregated. So he later also lived in that same Jewish ghetto as my grandparents, from which he was deported on March 24th, 1942 to Izbika, Poland, which was a Jewish ghetto southeast of Lublin. The commander of Izbika was an exceptionally cool Kurt English. Perhaps you heard that name. He must have died there because, if I recall correctly, there were no survivors of Izbika. We don't know when he died. Okay, my mother. My mother was born in 1916, 3 years after her brother Robert. She was very intelligent. As you can read in that first information sheet about Nuremberg, this city became the birthplace of Nazism with the publication of their Stürmer in the 1920s, which explains why she was beaten by her schoolmates every day when she walked home from school, and no one did anything about it. My mother had a tough skin, probably because of those experiences as a young schoolgirl. She was very close with her father, who, as I said, was very rural. He taught my mother American poetry, including Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's famous poem, The Psalm of Life, which I didn't know, but she could probably have recited by memory until the day she died, 2 months shy of 100. And she had dementia, but I'm sure she could have recited this poem because she knew it so well. And that poem, in hindsight, seems prophetic. It begins, quote, "Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem." In a later verse, "Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime. And departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time." In spite of all her burdens, my mother was a happy girl, always optimistic, and hence dubbed Little Miss Sunshine. She wanted to go to gymnasium, which, as I said on the bus, was a combination of high school and probably the first 2 years of university. But her father insisted that she go to vocational school, where she learned secretarial skills, including shorthand in German, French, and English. She spoke those 3 languages. And that turned out to be a blessing, because while other immigrants to America had to work in sweatshops or clean houses, like a very wealthy cousin of my mother's who ended up cleaning houses, my mother eventually landed a job as a secretary in one of the Jewish brokerage firms on Wall Street and quickly rose to become head of the secretariat. But how did she get to America without her parents? She always wanted to go to America because her father had been there twice and told her about it. When Hitler came to power in 1933, and again, he gave speeches here in Nuremberg. This was really the birthplace of Nazism. So she asked her father to write to his half-brother Albert Blumlein. My grandfather's mother had died in childbirth, and his father had married again, and Albert was the product of that second marriage. My grandfather resisted writing to Albert because Albert had stowed away on a ship when he was 20 years old and was considered to be the black sheep of the Blumlein family. But my mother was insistent. My mother was very strong willed. She was very insistent. And so her father wrote to Albert. And as fast as a letter could get in 1933, from Nuremberg to New York City on a ship, and letter back by ship to Nuremberg, came the answer from my Uncle Albert. Because you, my grandfather, took care of my mother. I was my grandfather's stepmother. In her old age, I'll take care of your daughter, send her to me. So Albert, my Uncle Albert, saved my mother's life. And as an aside, because this is very dear to me, Albert never married or had children. He lived in New York City, and I grew up outside of New York City. When I was born, he treated me like my granddaughter. He came to visit me on weekends, and my earliest memory is of Uncle Albert watching me ride my tricycle in the back patio of our home. There was a photo of me, about age 3, riding my tricycle with Uncle Albert there. And that's my earliest memory. And that was the only photo of Uncle Albert I found. So I have very loving feelings about Uncle Albert. Unfortunately, he was hit by a bus in New York City when I was 5.5 years old, and he died of his internal injuries. There's much more to the story about Uncle Albert. Harvey and I just participated in the reburial of my Uncle Albert from an unmarked grave in Westchester County, New York, to a grave which will be marked eventually when we were in New York the week before last. So if anybody wants more information about my Uncle Albert, I'll be happy to share that with you later, but it's not really directly pertinent. So back to my mother. She left Germany in February 1934. Her mother gave her this pendant at the train station when she left. And she celebrated her 18th birthday on the ship to New York. When she arrived in New York, she had her Uncle Albert and her father's full brother Julius to help her. But of course my mother didn't want to be a burden to her family. So she found work initially taking care of an elderly relative. But as soon as she could, she looked for other work, and as I told you, she landed a job as a Wall Street secretary. Meanwhile, in Germany, my grandparents and presumably my Uncle Robert were forced to wear yellow stars beginning in September 1941. Sadly, my grandparents had visas to leave Germany, but they couldn't get out for two reasons. First of all, Robert was deported to Uzbekistan in March 1942. And my grandparents didn't know where he had been deported. But my grandmother didn't want to leave Nuremberg in case he came back. And second, they were unable to arrange transportation in time. They did, however, send their most precious belongings to my mother in anticipation of their immigrating. And my mother kept those, and I inherited them. Furniture, china, silverware that my grandfather bought, sterling silver that he bought when he lived in England for his future wife, tablecloths embroidered by my great-grandmother's. My grandparents were deported to Theresienstadt on September 10, 1942. My grandfather died there of starvation on April 18, 1943. After he died, my grandmother was sent to Auschwitz, where she perished. We don't know the date of her death. I grew up without any grandparents, and since I became a grandmother this past January, I feel even more that I was robbed of relationships with grandparents that I was entitled to. However, the reality is that my parents would never have met were it not for the show. So I struggle with those conflicting feelings and realities. I'm going to finish by telling you a very bittersweet story. In Auschwitz, my grandmother worked in the pharmacy alongside a young woman named Erna Marcus Poe. After my mother and father became engaged in the spring or summer of 1942, my mother was able to get a letter to her mother in Auschwitz through the American Red Cross. My mother wrote that she had just become engaged to a young dentist in New York City named Hans Werner Marcus. My grandmother read the letter to her pharmacy maid, Erna Marcus Poe, who said, "He's my first cousin." So my grandmother learned that her daughter was engaged before she was murdered, and learned about her daughter's fiancé. Erna Marcus Poe later escaped on a death march to the east of Russia, and she survived to tell my parents the story.
Those words, the stories. The story ultimately is tragic. Talk about the exhibiting what it means to truly be alive, to be the types of people who reach will be Kaddish eventually. But El Mulay is awesome. Oh, yes, I think it's a good idea. Let's lay the stones.
Sure.
As we're laying the stones, these words of comfort, not only
Brauchst du mich?
Yeah.
Robert? Soll ich mit?
Not only will these words of comfort be comfort to you, but also, we hope, in some existential meaning. Words of the 23rd Psalm remind us of God's eternal guardianship. The fact that even in the valley of deepest darkness, often translated as the valley of the shadow of death, God is with us. God is there as our shield and our comfort. these
Sitzen halt
sizes.
Kinder nebeneinander, ne?
Huh?
Also das Ehepaar nebeneinander und
Ja.
Kinder drunter. Ne? Also
Lisbeth ist der Arthur und
Arthur ist der Vater und Edna die Mutter. Die sind
Does it go that way or facing the street? Then you should put them facing the street. No, I think my grandfather, Arthur.
nicht so viel. Ne?
Those who remember this day did not have funerals. They did not have anyone to pray that their souls might be in eternal rest. And so on this day, we pray for their souls to be at peace under the protection of God's wings. El Malay Rachamim, Shokain Bamramim, Kamse Menucha, Nakara Kante, Ashina, Im, Utarim, Kidoshim, Utuzapur, Harakia, Mazirin, Kirim, Shalach, Alamo, Babur, Shinarvo, Sinaka, Bahad, Hashukar, Mikhato, Aiden Taya, Minuchato, Lachaim Baal Harachamim, Yistarehu, Beseter, Kanafav, Olamim, Vayitzur, Bitzur, Hatanim, Et Nishmato, Adonai, Hu Nakalato, Bianua, Bishalom, Al Mishkava, to no more, let us all say, Amen. God, full of mercy, who dwells in the heights, provide a sure rest upon the divine presence wings, along with all those who are holy, pure, and glorious and righteous, whose shining resemble the skies to the soul of those who are remembering this day. For this act of commemoration memorializes their soul. Therefore, Master of Mercy, may you protect them forever, always shielding them under your wings and tying their souls with the rope of life. Adonai is their inheritance. May they rest peacefully forever. And let us all say, Amen. Shining stars, as well as for those for whom there is no one to say Hajj. We join together.
Yikadal Yikadash Shemei Rabbah Almad Dibrakute Yamlik Malkute B'chayechon B'yomechon B'chayei T'chol Beit Yisrael B'alav Yisman Harim V'imru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah Barach Le'olam Rodei Amaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitamar V'yitmam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Kedusha B'richu Le'elam Min Kol V'rechata B'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Ta'amira V'yama V'imru Amen Yehi Shmama Rabbah V'yishmaya V'kayim Aleinu V'yakol Yisrael V'imru Amen Oseh Shalom B'mromav U'yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'yakol Yisrael V'imru Amen.
May the one who brings peace and harmony on high, and peace and comfort to all who are mourning this day, particularly bringing peace and comfort to the souls of these who we remember. Let us all say.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a great gift.